we're going to go live about the term all defense all the time that is used by Gypsy Stratton. Old school dog training. That's how we used to do it back in the day. So we're going to explain that principle because there's been some questions about it and no one's really explaining the theory. And Derek Krause had made mention that he wants to know about it. He wants to learn about it better himself. I commend him for that because right now, personal protection, the Chicago way, as we do it, to me is a lost art. So we do have to reestablish it. It's still happening. I've been training for 33 years, since 1986, and I use it to this day. I'm not going to stop because it works for me. So what we're going to talk about is, I'm not looking to debate anybody on this. This is what we do and how we do it. So it works for me. I'm not knocking what anybody else does. If you're doing sport, PSA, Schutzen, IPO, ring sport, KNPV, any of those things, it just doesn't matter to me. This is what we do. I'm not knocking any of that, and I think there's great dogs in all of it. But when we talk about personal protection from a Chicago point of view, you have to be qualified to talk about that. So I consider myself qualified because I was around back in the 80s and 90s when it was being done. I was taught by Darnell Wells person. A lot of you people don't know the people that we're going to talk about in this conversation. So this is not going to be a one-time conversation. It's going to be multiple times that we'll pretty much come live and explain this stuff because you can't do it in an hour or two. It's going to take some time to pretty much get you guys to know and understand what it is that we do and why. So number one, let's talk about Gypsy Stratton.
1 second. They complaining about
Hang on a
sound.
minute. I think we got a sound issue, so we're going to fix that up for you here in a minute. Are you guys able to hear us better now? Hang on a second. We're going to fix the sound issue. Everybody can hear us now? Great. I don't know how much you missed, but I'm going to recap that a little bit so you guys can know and understand what it is that we're talking about. Today's issue is going to discuss all defense all the time. This is what you might hear from Gypsy Stratton. This is old school dog training. So I'm going to explain the theory and how we use it, why we use it, the benefits from it, and how it affects what we do. So when we say all defense all the time, or when Gypsy says all defense all the time, my view of that is just a little bit different, but I believe in what he's talking about. So I do personal protection work in the Chicago way all the time. I'm never going to stop. So that's just what we do. It works for me. And I have a lot of clients and a lot of proven dogs, you know what I'm saying, to stand that up against. No problem. So now, let's first talk about the qualifications to be able to talk about this. I certainly believe that I'm qualified to talk about it because I came up in that era. I grew up in it. These people that we're talking about watched me when I was brand new into the game in 1986. I've been training for 33 years. They've watched me come in 1986 and watch me develop into where I'm at right now. So let's go over some of the old school people. We're talking about Gypsy Stratton. This guy probably forgot more than what most people know about the subject that we're talking about right now. I can't think of a better person to sit down and have a conversation with about old school dog training or personal protection / street training is what we pretty much call it. All right, this guy is very gifted at what he does. A lot of you have not had the opportunity to view his talent back in the 80s. He was one of the best out there as far as civil agitation is concerned. This is a man that has never told me no about anything, always offered his advice. His advice has been very respected by me. I respect him. Anything that he pretty much wants from me, if I can do it, I'll do it from him. And that's from a dog trainer's point of view. And I consider Gypsy a friend. So Darnell Wells is the person that put me together, that taught me what I know now about dog training. The rest of it I got by learning myself and going across the country and going across the world, learning about dog training. But there's one thing that sticks out that I noticed that I hadn't seen any place else that I went that I got here in Chicago from this type of dog training, and that was reading a dog properly. A lot of that's not done across the nation and across the world. I was taught from Darnell Wells to properly read a dog. This in exchange helps you train the dog a lot better because you're training the mindset and the mentality. So now, my question is, for those people that are teaching personal protection right now, where'd you get it from? I've been at it for 33 years in the Chicagoland area. If you did not come through me, if you did not come through Darnell Wells, Scorpio, Gypsy, if you're not, and that's just naming a few, I'm leaving some people out. But if you did not come through those people, and I don't mean come and taking a class, if they didn't grab you and bring you in and show you what was done with me, then where'd you get your personal protection from? There's nobody else that can teach you. There's people that's teaching personal protection that just got a small bit of it and spreading it about. But if you don't have the full entity, you can't come to some classes. You can't train with someone a year and know the full depth of personal protection, or why some people say all defense all the time. You have to have not trained with someone. You had to have studied underneath someone. So now, back then, we were dealing with dogs that had very high defense drives. So defense would work. The difference is defense and prey. You have a prey dog that'll go down and take a bite. And there's a lot of prey-driven dogs that will hurt you. There's a lot of prey-driven dogs that do protection very well. With a defensive dog, you have dogs that have the intent on hurting you. That's a primary difference in between the two. When you do defense work, it's not like the dog is defending himself, but it is. And we have to do the civil work, the civil agitation to prove that. We're simply just letting a dog know exactly what a human can do to it. Its ability. So the dog is actually being sparred with. It's being taught what the human limitations are and what the dog's limitations are. So the secret to the skin work and the defense work is closeness and what you actually do to the dog. Not just bouncing around in front of the other dog, hissing, cracking the whip, and all that other kind of stuff. Those are very minute things that are added in. If you don't have an intended purpose in front of that dog, then we're not teaching personal protection. We're not teaching defense. There's a lot that goes to it, and we're going to break that down. So, Derek, you mentioned video and things of that nature. We're preparing right now to make those posts. We're preparing right now to be able to show and illustrate how that goes. To me, personal protection, skin work, street work is like jujitsu to the martial arts world. No matter what genre of defense you came from, jiu-jitsu just simply made it better. So I don't care if it's prey, Schutzen, KNPV, ring sport, PSA, whatever it is that they're doing out there, street work, in that particular type of defense typically will make that situation better because it's going to enhance certain drives in the dog that's going to make this dog really want to bite a person for real. You see, there's a difference in between a dog running down the field or up close and biting a man in a suit and a dog biting a man for real. There's a difference in between that. It's not the same thing. I was looking for a German Shepherd for a baseball player in Florida, played with the Marlins. And he wanted a real personal protection dog. He was paying for it. He flew me across the country to various different kennels to find this dog. And I'm making phone calls. He's making phone calls. And everybody is saying, we got a German Shepherd. He'll definitely bite a person. And when I get there, the dog will bite a man, but he'll bite a man in a suit. He would not bite me for real. You gather that through a lot of the defense work that we do. Now, my personal opinion is that I have a balance in between it. I prefer probably 60% defense, maybe about 40% prey. It just works for me. But I also have to defend Gypsy's stand on defense all the time. What has changed is the breeding of the dogs. There's a very big disconnect with how dogs are being bred versus the work that the trainers do. And these guys don't talk. That's the problem. Right now, we got a lot of dogs that are being born prey-driven, and now the training has adjusted to the prey-driven dogs. We had defensive dogs that would try to kill you. We had defensive dogs that would run down the field, make a strong hit, take you off your feet. All of this was through defense. So what's the change? The change is how the dogs started coming in, and we started seeing it. You got dogs that are not bred with those particular qualities no more. You have dogs that are bred with very high prey drives, very little defense. They don't address the defense very well. They address prey very well. At our facility, we bring the dog out in whatever his strongest drive is. If he's got a strong drive of defense, we're going to bring the dog out in defense, add in a little prey if we can. If the dog is strong in prey, we're going to bring the dog out in prey, add in a little defense if we can. So now, all defense all the time, these are dogs that were put together that were very nice in personal protection, well controlled. Obedience is a must. I see nowadays people just basically get a lot of aggression out of the dog, then start to work their little defense in. That's fine. But it was the opposite with us. We had full control over the dog while we were doing our protection work because we knew that these dogs were dangerous. Give you an example. There was I forget this guy's name, Mark or Mike, someone. It's a Schützen trainer. Downstate Illinois, they were given a seminar, and it was called a protection seminar. We didn't know what it was. We just seen the word protection, so we decided to get a bunch of dogs together. We were going to go down there and check it out. I had a group of my people. Gypsy had his dog, a group of his people, and there was some other people that came down. I think we probably came down there about maybe 15, 18 people deep, you know what I'm saying, as well as dogs. And when we got into the seminar, we quickly understood that it was a Schützen seminar, and they were talking about protection as far as Schützen is concerned. And this guy had this Rottweiler there. He caught the Rottweiler on his sleeve. He laid on the ground. He wrapped his legs around the dog's neck, and the dog's pulling him, dragging him across the ground, that and the other, and they call the dog out. The guy lets go of the sleeve. The dog brings the sleeve back to the handler. And all we were doing is sitting in the stand saying there's no way possible he could do that with any one of our dogs. If you remotely even tried to do that with one of our dogs, you're going to get yourself severely hurt. He had on scratch pants. So as we started to continue to work, we started to bring out some of our dogs to participate in the seminar. And they got very intimidated about what we had. And as a matter of fact, those that attended it, if you're on this live, you can attest to it. Everything that I'm going to tell you is what I know, is what I've seen, is what I've experienced. So I'm not going to beat around that any kind of way. I'm going to give it to you straight. This is exactly how it is because this is how I saw it. I was around since 1986 in the street dog protection world. So nobody else they could tell you a lot of different things. If you really want to know the truth about it, I was there, I can tell you. I could tell you who was working dogs, who was not, who competed in the competitions, who are not. There's a lot of people out here that are talking street personal protection, and they ain't did an ounce of it. They were just around. They were just talking about it. I'm talking about the people that fully dived into street, and this is what they did as a profession. So we get down there, and Gypsy had a dog at the time. Chief Little Dog, I believe, was his name. So it was Gypsy's turn to come up. They didn't trust Gypsy holding the dog. They asked to back tie the dog, that another, and they did. And the guy came in and started doing some civil work with the dog, and when he stopped, his exact words, and if you don't believe me, you can ask Gypsy, Adrian, whoever else was at that seminar. He said, "You make it hard for me to do any kind of work with this dog because you've made the dog so dangerous, I can't get in to do exactly what I want to do." This is the principle. This is what a personal protection dog is. A personal protection dog is a dangerous dog, but it's also a dog that's set up and designed to be around your family, your friends. You could have guests over. The proper personal protection dog, you would never know if it was personal protection trained unless something happened. And when I say something happens, you either do something to me or I command the dog to do something to you. You bother someone in the family, you try to steal something, take things of that nature, then you would know. Other than that, this would be a normal, everyday dog. It's not a crazy dog. It's not a wild dog. It's not an out-of-control dog. If we're talking about personal protection, you have to have the equal amount of protection has to equate to the same amount of obedience, if not more obedience. The control in your obedience is what's going to control the aggression. So those that have been with me for quite some time will know an out is something we rarely have to teach. Because the dogs have enough control when we tell it no, out, or call its name, it's going to let go of the sleeve anyway and return to us. So we need to be able to control the aggression. So back in the day, defense was very high. Dogs were born and bred with a lot of defense. This is what we were training. And they turned out to be very well-balanced dogs, well-trained dogs. Can do anything that we could today have a dog do how to prey. And this is what we were doing from defense. The difference is that when you start to include the defense, this is what the dog sees. So if this is what the dog sees, what does the dog learn? To bite, not a sleeve, not a suit. We would agitate these dogs in such a way in defense, there was no question in our mind that when we let the dog go, he was going to go down the field and take a bite. No question. Back in the day, Gypsy and them would do so much defense to a dog and test the dog solid on defense during the 360 or the civil agitation. We would already know if that dog was going to be able to make it down the field and take a hit or not. just from what was done on the 360. So we knew this. You could tell from the dog. If the dog couldn't stand up to the 360, doubtful it was going to make a trip. But it produced serious dogs. That's the reason why we use it, because at no means did we ever want a dog that was not going to be serious and companionated at the same time. Now, I remember this situation where Gypsy's son left the state. He called his father up. And again, everything that I tell you is verifiable. You can check it out yourself and see. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm not going to tell you a lie about what I know. He called Gypsy back and he said, Dad, I'm going to learn how to train. I'm going to start training dogs wherever he's at. And I need some equipment. Can you send me some equipment? Gypsy said, sure. Choker, leather collar, leather leash. Those of you that really know personal protection and street dog work, this is all you need to train a personal protection dog. Now, that goes a little bit deep. And a lot of people are not going to understand that. That's another live that we're going to do. To fully train a personal protection dog, both obedience and protection, no sleeve, no suit, no scratch pans, none of that stuff on both sides of the dog. The handler side, the agitator of the dog. All you need to train a personal protection dog, leather collar, choker, leather leash. You guys are all saying, how in the hell is that possible? If you were not around, you don't know. So there's a big gap in between what you guys are doing now versus where we started at. So if you've never been in a situation where you had to catch a dog on a sin, whether it was 6 foot down the field, and this was all you had, you guys have not experienced that. You haven't experienced putting a dog together that way. You haven't experienced being able to protect yourself with just this, or what we call a flag. See, when Earl Jones brought this thing here to Chicago, I'm saying it was a lot of poor people that basically got into it. So suits were big and bulky, suits were not affordable, sleeves were not affordable. But there was a way that could be done, and you can make a very effective personal protection dog from something like this. Now, again, I know a lot of the new people are trying to figure this out and say, what the hell is he talking about? We're going to get into that later. That's going to be another live on how you can get a dog to bite every part of your body with this right here. Now, to give you another example of it, Sid Dozier, TCK9. A lot of you people remember Sid Dozier when he was here in Chicago. He's now down in Texas and he owns TCK9. As a matter of fact, we're about to put some things together so that we'll be working hand in hand with each other again. You guys know that Sid Dozier was my partner at one time up here in Chicago. So we trained the same. We got the same continuity. And he brought that concept to Texas, and they were kind of shocked by it. They didn't know what it was. They didn't understand it. Defense. They understood defense from the way they were taught it, but they didn't understand it from our point of view. So Sidney decided to give a competition, a personal protection competition. He asked me and my son to come down, help him agitate it, help him put the competition on, work it. And we did. So I came up with about maybe 4 scenarios. One of the scenarios was you had to come on the field, stand still, send your dog at the target, which was my son. So we had other agitators that came in that wanted to help Sidney do it. And that first send was going to be on the sleeve. And they said, no way. If I can't use my suit, can't do it. We were like, wow, all you got to do is catch the dog. He said, well, what if the dog comes over the sleeve or under the sleeve? Number one, we already knew right then and there, you do not know what you're doing when you're standing in front of a dog if a sleeve is not sufficient, because we were catching dogs with no sleeve. So it came into so much of an uproar. We said, you know what, forget it. We're going to have you guys do some suit scenarios that I come up with. I'll let my son do that portion. All it was, and you can check with TCK9 to be sure. All it was, step onto the field. My son probably was about 15 yards away, leaning on some steps. Send your dog. Every single dog would not send. I'm not lying. They did not send because my son had the sleeve behind his back. They couldn't see it. I told him, keep the sleeve behind your back. Pull it out when you need it. Everybody's trying to figure out why the dog would not come and hit him, because he had on no equipment. The suit scenarios, they blast them people. Him, wouldn't touch him. They didn't see the sleeve. They were wondering, how was this even possible? Again, all of this can be verified through Sid Dozier at TCK9. So now people were asking questions about what it is that you guys do. With what we do, we know that the dog's going to come down there and bite anything that's down there, whether you got a suit, sleeve, or nothing. We know what it's going to do because this is how it started. The dog started out seeing this. So no one's going to break into your home with a sleeve or a bite suit. No one's going to carjack you with a sleeve or a bite suit. No one's going to catch you at your cash station or anything like that with your dog with a sleeve or a bite suit. So the dog must learn how to bite flesh, which is why one of the old school terminology is flesh work, because this is what the dog sees in the beginning. So when you go online and you look at a lot of these dogs that are 10, 12 weeks old and they're on burlap and they're picking them up off the ground and they're slinging them around and they're going crazy over the burlap, especially Malinois and Dutch Shepherds. If your Malinois and Dutch Shepherd is not doing that at 12 weeks, get rid of the dog. That's automatic what they should do. That's what was bred in them. So we expected that many moons ago. We expected that 30 years ago from Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, because it was their mentality. So it's not impressive for us to see a litter of dogs that are 10 weeks old running around biting on burlap and holding it up in the air. That's the breed. But that's not impressive to us. It may be impressive to other people. It just shows us that the dog is into equipment very early. That's all. So if you guys that have been in the training 10, 15 years and have exalted yourselves as far as being trainers in elite and on top of it and knowing personal protection, what do you think we were doing back in the 80s? And we had very successful dogs, and we did not use any of these techniques that are being used today. And we had great dogs that will hurt you. I had a pit bull Sammy, black, will hurt you. Ask any of those people. Ask Sid Dozier. Ask Gypsy Stratton. Ask Wayne Singleton. We had a hardest hitting competition down in Bourbonnais. Wayne caught my dog, had the suit jacket on, didn't have it buttoned up. I asked him, I said, Wayne, button it up. He said, no, I got it. The dog took him down. Wayne knew immediately, I got to get my ass up off of this ground, because he clearly knew that dog could do some damage. When we start talking about old school dogs like Bogey, that Jim Carr owned, Chicago Pet Boutique, 63rd, I might be off a little bit, 63rd and either Ashland or Kesey, I want to say, at the time. When we start talking about dogs like Bogey, which anybody has ever stood in front of Bogey or watched Bogey work can tell you that Bogey was a very serious dog. This was a dog that can hurt you, that wanted to. It was in him. He wanted to hurt you. He didn't want to come down and bite a sleeve or bite a suit and play around with it, let you pull him all over the place. This dog was designed to damage you, and that's what he wanted to do. Well, guess what? This was a dog that was put together by Gypsy Stratton. All defense, all the time. It was his theory. The girl Dawn that produced that dog, all defense, all the time. You guys don't even know or probably have heard of a dog by the name of Tobar the Great, which was Earl Jones' dog. All defense, all the time, and a dog that will seriously hurt you. A very well-trained, a dog that could be around people. Something that you don't have to put up when someone comes over. Excuse me, let me put my dog away, then you guys could come inside. What's the use in having a personal protection dog if you gotta lock him up? He should be able to be out. He should be able to be around, because when you get stupid in my house, he's gonna react, or I'm gonna tell him to. But that dog needs to be next to me so that I can direct all of that. So I can have one guest or 100 at my house. It doesn't matter. My dog's not going to kill you. Don't screw up. There's the difference in between the two. You guys ever have dogs out on the training field like you normally do? And as soon as people start putting on suits and cracking the whips, all of the dogs are going crazy. Who fired them up? What fired them up? The suit and the whip. Inanimate objects. They're not threats. We teach that the person is the threat. Case scenario, KMPV, Schutzen, most of these sports where the dogs come and bite a sleeve. And again, I'm not knocking it, because some of the best trained dogs I've ever seen have been Schutzen dogs, ring dogs, KMPV dogs. But if your dog takes that sleeve and the agitator lets that sleeve go and it takes it back, that's how this dog was conditioned. You see, in those sports, typically your responsibility is to make sure that your dog is safe, that it's not going around hitting all these other people that might be on the field, especially the judge. It has to be safe. It's safe. The equipment makes it a sport. You can't drop no sleeve around our dogs. We teach against that. And I don't mean drop a sleeve, pull up another sleeve. That's what a lot of people do these days. Catch the dog, let that sleeve go. The dog comes and gets the second sleeve that the person has. We teach that the man is the object. So even if you get bit for real, and you got a coat on and you slip the coat, the dog spits the coat out. He don't stay there shaking the coat. He's got to come back on you. This is the benefit of the civil work if done correctly. If you are doing your civil agitation in front of a dog with bite scratch pants on, a bite suit on, and a sleeve, you are not doing personal protection. You're not. That dog first has to know what this is and what it can do against it. That's what it needs to know first. Everything else is just simply protection. The dog has to know that it has the ability to be able to bite you and think, if this is not a good area, change. Get where you can get. Work what you can work. But if your dog is what we call a dog that will go in and take a bite and becomes a vice grip, he's just not coming off like what a lot of people are doing today in the armpit. And I'm not trying to step on any toes. I'm just giving you a different view of what it is when you start talking about personal protection and sport. In personal protection, the dog is allowed to bite you any place on your body. It's not one specific area. We got sleeves and we got suits that we use and other, but that dog is definitely capable of biting you in any part of your body. Your dog bites in the armpit and stays there the way of what I'm basically seeing online today, you can easily get your dog killed. Simple. Dog refuses to move, I'm going to manipulate that. I'm going to take that bite and I'm going to kill your dog. You set that up. You trained your dog to fail. Your dog takes that hit. If he stays there and does not come off, I'm going to kill your dog. If that dog doesn't have the sense to let go, rebite, grab the arm that's the threat, he's going to get hurt. So I got a dog that's going to bite in my legs, bite on my arm, bite in the armpit, and I literally could beat the hell out of it, and it don't even think about changing the bite and go to the hand that's threatening. That's how you've conditioned the dog. That dog has to know, let that go. Get what's bothering you. Get what's hurting you, what can hurt you, which all comes from the skin work. So it knows about swings. It knows about grabbing. It knows about how we can manipulate the dog and flank it if needed. Because it had an opportunity to study our moves. Sorry about that, guys, but that's just my other dogs. They might hear me talking about this and they're just getting excited. They might want to do some work, which we're going to do is after this video is done anyway. So when you have certain people, and I'm also the type of person, I'm going to call it right out. If you want to confront me, I don't have a problem with it because I can back up everything that I pretty much say, and we do that on the field. It is what it is. So let's address Keith Phipps. He's pushing this theory now about forget the offense, forget the defense, pray is the way to go. That's his theory. I'm not going to knock that. Keith's a pretty decent trainer. But by no means is Keith qualified to talk about personal protection. He's not. He wasn't around when it was being done in his heyday. Who taught him? Keith came to me for a long time for training. But like I said, you cannot train with someone for a year. And if they didn't grab you and put you underneath that program and teach you exactly what we're doing and what's that about, it's a difference in between training your client and teaching your client to train. There's a difference in between the two. So if that's what you do and that's what you believe in, keep that. Don't try to convince everybody else that it's not right. Just do what you do. That's what I do. I don't care what you guys are talking about. Schutz and IPO, ring, PSA, whatever. That's fine.